One of the quieter failures of the Korean War had nothing to do with strategy, firepower, or morale. It had to do with rot. In the rush to build barracks, bridges, command posts, and supply depots, modern armies relied on timber that was treated quickly, predictably, and honestly incorrectly for the conditions it faced. Within just a few months, wood decayed, warped, or failed structurally under moisture, freeze-thaw cycles, and microbial attack. Engineers solved some of these problems later with chemicals and industrial treatments, but the uncomfortable truth is this. Medieval builders working without modern science often produced wood that lasted longer and performed better. That contradiction is worth examining carefully. If you value this kind of material-level history, the kind that explains why systems endure or collapse, consider subscribing to History Vault. This channel focuses on what's usually ignored, the decisions beneath the surface that determine long-term survival. Rot has always been an enemy, not an accident. Modern thinking treats rot as an inevitable process, slowed by coatings, pressure treatment, or replacement schedules. Medieval builders did not. They treated rot as an adversary to be actively neutralized through planning, timing, and environment. Their success wasn't accidental or mystical. It was the result of empirical knowledge passed down through guilds, monastic communities, and military engineers who had no margin for structural failure. In a medieval context, timber failure meant collapsed fortifications, unusable bridges, or ruined storage facilities. These were not inconveniences. They were existential threats during sieges, winters, and campaigns. As a result, medieval rot-proofing was designed for longevity first and convenience second. One of the most overlooked aspects of medieval wood preservation was when a tree was cut. Medieval builders consistently favored winter-felled timber. At that time, sap content was lowest, sugars were reduced, and internal moisture was minimized. This made the wood inherently less attractive to fungi and insects before any further treatment occurred. By contrast, modern industrial logging prioritizes volume and efficiency. Trees are cut year-round, then chemically treated afterward to compensate. Medieval builders started with wood that was already biologically disadvantaged against decay. This single choice extended lifespan dramatically and reduced the need for later intervention. Water, not air, was often the first preservative. It seems counterintuitive, but medieval builders frequently soaked timber in water, sometimes for years. Submersion in rivers, ponds, or tidal zones leached sugars and altered the internal chemistry of the wood. In oxygen-poor environments, decay organisms could not thrive. When removed and dried slowly, this wood became remarkably stable. Archaeological evidence from medieval bridges, harbour pilings, and foundations shows timbers that remained structurally sound for centuries because they were first saturated, not dried. Modern builders rarely use this method because it requires time, space, and planning, resources that modern construction often sacrifices for speed. You know, medieval rot-proofing was not crude at all. Controlled smoking exposed timber to antimicrobial compounds that actually penetrated the surface layers. Light charring sealed the fibers without compromising strength, which is pretty clever if you think about it. Pine tar, which was rendered slowly from resin-rich wood, was absorbed deep into beams and planks, repelling insects and moisture at the same time. These methods, though, required real skill. Overheating would weaken the wood, and too much tar could make it brittle. Medieval craftsmen understood these limits because they observed failure directly and, well, adjusted their practices accordingly. Nowadays, modern builders often rely on standardized treatments that ignore context, just assuming that uniform solutions work everywhere. But medieval builders designed structures to shed water, to breathe, and to avoid moisture traps. Roof overhangs were extended, foundations were raised, and wood rarely contacted soil directly, unless it was intentionally submerged, where, oxygen was absent. During the Korean War, many temporary structures ignored these principles. Speed mattered more than airflow or drainage. The result was, honestly, predictable trapped moisture, accelerated decay, and structural weakness. Medieval builders would have recognized these failures immediately. In medieval warfare, infrastructure endurance directly affected military outcomes. A bridge that failed prematurely could isolate forces. A rotted palisade invited assault. A damp granary ruined supplies. Rot-proofing was therefore part of strategic planning, not just an afterthought. This mindset, you see, contrasts sharply with modern assumptions that replacement is easier than preservation. Medieval societies simply lacked surplus resources. They invested heavily in making things last because rebuilding under pressure was often impossible. Modern pressure-treated wood is effective in controlled environments, but, honestly, it often prioritizes uniformity over longevity. Chemicals leach out, treatments fail when cut ends are exposed, and structural design assumes maintenance cycles that may not actually occur under stress. Medieval methods integrated material selection, treatment, and design into a single system. No part worked alone. That holistic approach is, difficult to replicate in modern construction, where responsibilities are fragmented across industries and timelines. The Korean War exposed the cost of forgetting old knowledge. During the war, cold, moisture, and microbial decay undermined structures that were assumed adequate. Engineers adapted, but always reactively. Medieval builders had already internalized these lessons because failure meant starvation, exposure, or defeat. This is not an argument against modern technology. It's just a reminder that progress does not always mean improvement in every dimension. Sometimes knowledge is lost not because it stopped working, but because it stopped fitting economic priorities. The medieval approach to rot-proofing reflects a broader survival philosophy. Prepare early, respect the environment, and accept that time invested up front prevents catastrophe later. These principles apply far beyond construction. For survivalists, historians, and planners, the lesson is clear. Systems that endure are built slowly, deliberately, and with an understanding of failure modes. Shortcuts create hidden vulnerabilities that surface under stress. When history focuses only on battles and leaders, it misses the quiet technologies that made survival possible. Medieval rot-proofing kept bridges standing, halls dry, and defenses intact long after builders were gone. These were not minor achievements. They shaped political stability, military capability, and daily life. Remembering these practices is not nostalgia. It's recognition that human ingenuity has long solved problems we still struggle with, sometimes better than we do now. If you value this kind of deep historical analysis, subscribe to History Vault and share this video. These lessons matter because they reveal how endurance is engineered, not improvised, and why understanding the past remains essential for facing the future.